Hi, I'm John Barnes with WUVA, and today we're here with the brilliant Raúl Castillo, who recently stars in the new film The Inspection, which is coming to theaters November 18th and is screening this week at the Virginia Film Festival. First, Raúl, I just want to congratulate you on such an amazing film. Your performance was such a powerhouse to watch.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I know you've starred in some previous projects like Looking on HBO, Cha Cha Real Smooth, and I was wondering how it was different preparing for this role compared to some of your other characters, since those films are kind of set, those other projects are set in more contemporary worlds, but this is the Marine, the military in 2005 during
Right.
Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Right.
So I imagine there was quite a bit of research involved.
Absolutely. Well, The Inspection is based off of our director, Elegance Bratton's life. He also wrote the script. He was homeless for about 10 years. He'd been kicked out of home for his sexuality, and he was kind of in a place where he saw no way out, and he really needed a drastic change. And he enlisted in the Marines, and he went through boot camp and became a Marine. Like you said, during the Don't Ask, Don't Tell, he was a Marine for 8 years, and he's a filmmaker now. He's made a couple documentaries, and The Inspection is his narrative feature debut. And I think this film is different than any other project that I've worked on in that it's so deeply personal to Elegance. It's his story. I mean, it's fictionalized. The character's name is Ellis French, not Elegance Bratton, so, but it's very much based on his own personal experiences. So in that way, I think myself and the rest of the cast felt a deep sense of responsibility to telling the story. I think every film and every story is personal in some way or another, but this was directly sourced from his own experience. And in that way, it's very different than anything that I've done.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask about one of the more intense sequences in the film and how you guys approached filming that CPR scene, because that's one of the biggest turning points in the film and kind of one of the first times that your character shows some kind of sympathy or compassion for French. So what was it like approaching such an intense scene like that?
Well, we broke it up. That scene, there was a stunt involved. It's so intense, and a lot of it takes place underwater, and it's kind of nerve-wracking. So you want to be intentional and thoughtful when approaching work like that, because keeping each other safe is the most important thing. We got into the meat of the scene, which is where Rosales, my character, and Jeremy Pope's character, French, start creating a bond. There's the adage in filmmaking, hurry up and wait. It's a lot of waiting. It's a lot of standing around waiting, and especially scenes like this that are tricky and highly technical, there's a lot of waiting. So there was a lot of patience involved when shooting that scene. But yeah, I feel proud of how it came out.
I feel like a lot of people don't know sometimes that there's so many minor events in film that might need a stunt just for safety.
Completely,
so it's really interesting to hear you talk about that process. This kind of segues into my next question. Your character, he's training the recruits in the military, and he's very rigid in the beginning of the film. And I was wondering, what was it like were there any challenges trying to play a character and trying to maybe show those nuances of his sympathy towards French, because he doesn't really say anything to him until around halfway through the film that kind of indicates that he does have a lot of sympathy for him and wants to encourage him to keep going with his training. So were there any challenges playing such like a rigid and sometimes sort of emotionless character in the beginning?
Absolutely. I mean, the challenge was, Marines go through boot camp, and then they, and they come out and they do their service, and that physicality, that vocal quality is instilled from boot camp, and as they move forward in their time of service, and it's in their bodies. And anytime you're around military men and women, you could see it the way they hold themselves. I'm a sloucher. I have the worst posture. My mom used to always get after me for that. The summer that we were shooting, it was like living in that physical life, living in that vocal life, that cadence. I've always gravitated to the women in my life, pretty close with my mom, my sister, and I didn't play a lot of sports, so I wasn't in these environments that are really dude heavy, and getting to portray this character was like living in that world, and so that's kind of new to me, but thankfully we had a great ensemble, and Elegance brought on board to the production a person by the name of Octavia Jones, and Octavia is a currently active duty drill instructor in the Marines. She works at Camp Pendleton, I think, in San Diego, and she came on as a technical advisor, military advisor, consultant. So she worked with Bokeem Woodbine and Nick Logan and myself. They play Laws and Brooks, respectively, the other drill instructors in the film, and she whipped us into shape, and we had like 2 weeks, to get whipped into shape, and I think that was the most challenging, to try to honor what it is to be a Marine, and certainly a Marine drill instructor. But I also love characters that live in like the gray zone, that are not like told in primary colors, but like in nuance. I love characters that are nuanced, and I love that when I read the script, that's sort of what I was drawn to, was just how nuanced Rosales is. But you're right, you don't know that in the beginning. It's kind of like my character in Cha Cha Real Smooth. I feel like I think people expected one thing, and then you have that scene at the end in the car that people are always kind of surprised by. I love characters that challenge audience's expectations. Those are my favorite kind of characters, I think.
You definitely challenged my expectations.
Cool.
Especially at the end shower scene. I was like, no. Oh, spoilers. Without context.
Yeah.
I have kind of a quick side question about this training you just mentioned. I'm curious, was it mostly like physical Marines training, or more just sort of like embodying the behavior of a drill sergeant?
Yeah, no, it was physical, but it was also vocal. That summer, like my voice is already kind of raspy, but like I was really raspy that summer after barking orders all day. Like these young guys, there's a certain kind of cadence and that in the way they deliver the instructions. But Octavia really worked with us. There was also like, there's a shot where it's like a certain call and response, where I'm going through like a song and they're responding back. They're like echoing like the lyrics.
Oh, during the running?
Yeah, cadence. It's called cadence. I'm calling cadence. And I'm running with them and calling cadence, and they're responding. And Elegance was like, go learn a cadence and then come, and we're gonna shoot it in the rain tomorrow, because we don't have anything to shoot because it's raining. I was like, Elegance, like, I don't. So I went, researched a bunch of cadences and found a couple that I really liked, and there was the one that ended up in the film was the one that I really sort of responded to. So I was really happy with that.
That's a really interesting story. They were keeping you on your feet.
Yeah.
Because your character.
With filmmaking, it's like you make the plan, right? You have the script, and then you have a schedule, and there's a certain plan. But we all know, like, that. Plans are like, you try your best to stick to it, but then you also have to learn to be improvisational and learn to work with what you have. Like that day that it rained, we weren't expecting it to rain, so it rained, and we had to kind of scrap the scenes that we shot, that we were supposed to shoot, and we had to implement these other scenes. And sometimes those can be happy accidents that you capture something that you didn't expect to capture, and that's where filmmaking can be really interesting, where you have to work with what you have on the day. That
cadence scene was like, I felt like really immersed me in the world, because like you, I had no experience with this dude-centered area. I was also super close with my mom and sisters growing up. So I, like, every single time a new tradition was popping up on that screen, I was like, oh my. So this actually segues well into my last question. This film deals with a lot of tough topics like sexuality, homophobia, racism, masculinity. Are there any main themes and ideas that you want audience members to take away from watching this film?
Elegance speaks a lot to this, but the story is about this young queer man, this young black queer man who enlists in the Marines in an effort to win the love and affection of his mother. And in the course of becoming a Marine, he learns to love and respect himself. And that's very much based off of Elegance's own experience. you know, I love movies like Rocky, movies about the underdog and about someone overcoming great adversity to overcome odds and to achieve something, you know, and I feel like The Inspection is in the tradition of those kinds of films like Rocky, you know. It is heavy. It's a very heavy movie, but it's also, there's incredible levity to it. There's moments of humor throughout the movie, and it's also a really inspirational story. Like the first time I watched the movie, I was sort of drawn into this story of the underdog and this guy who overcomes odds to like find this sense of self-respect and self-worth. You know, in that scene with my character in the shower that you mentioned, like Rosales says to French, I went out of my way to build you up as a Marine because I believe in you, and you, to be a Marine, you have to learn to protect the Marine to your left and to your right, and that's where you find your value. That's sort of, I think, was a big lesson for Elegance when, as in his journey to become a Marine, and that's sort of, he sort of instilled that into this story. So I think it's a really inspirational story, and I hope like audiences will come away with that.
I completely agree. I think it's also a very educational film, just learning about these environments of boot camp. And yeah, that theme of overcoming adversity really spoke to me, and I could tell it did to the whole crowd.
Absolutely.
So, you should be proud of such amazing work on that.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it.
Thank you.